Hunter, I know this is something I've had every student teacher ask me. How do you know that you've made a difference? And I hadn't really thought about that. And I was just like, I haven't thought about that actually. And he was like, well, you're the first. And let me give you the answer. And he said, 20 years from now, you're going to be walking around the local Walmart, and you're going to have a former student of yours see you in the Walmart. They're going to have one or two reactions. Now, first one, which happens a lot, and I've seen it happen before, they're going to walk the other way. They're going to pretend they never saw you. Or they're going to come up to you, family in tow, shopping cart full of stuff, and they're going to shake your hand and they're going to thank you for what you did. And he said, that is why you're here. That is why you want to be here in the classroom. It's going to be tough. Planning is going to be difficult. Being able to deal with the troublesome students, sometimes it's not going to be your favorite day. But you know what? You're going to hit the end of the year and you're going to look back and you're going to be amazed at some of the progress you're going to be able to see within your students. Speaking of progress, one of the things that we had to develop during this year was monitoring student growth. We had to make sure we could see students growing within certain parts of the classroom. In my strategy here, I used current events to see students' interpretive narrative. I wanted to see students' ability to see news and interpret it in relation to themselves, in relation to what they're learning in the class, and how it relates to the world in general. And I saw a lot of growth among a lot of my students. Here, we had a student on their first report, and they only received a 7 out of 10. And they did not exemplify the idea of interpreting it themselves. They described the article, but they didn't really talk about what it meant to them. They didn't really try to relate it to the class. But over the time of the semester, I saw a beautiful growth out of this student. They were able to identify their opinion as I. They were able to say, well, I think this way. They were rationally responding, logically responding to the article, and they were providing a legitimate expression of thought. And that was my purpose with this article, is being able to create critical thinking with every single one of these students. I wanted them to think about what's going on in the world outside of the classroom. A lot of these kids, they live in their own little bubbles. I wanted to burst their bubble. That was my goal with this assignment, and I feel on a mass majority of these students, I managed to do that. Another thing that I learned over my time here in the program is using technology in the classroom. That is something that is just going to exponentially grow in the next decade. Absolutely. What we're using today is going to be completely different 10 years from now. And that's the beautiful thing. And we, as teachers, have to be able to adapt to that. Some of the things I used was Google Apps, Google Drive, Google Email, use key quizzes, being able to administer, give out data. Same thing with interactive achievement, being able to see student data on their assessments using an online resource, being able to use YouTube videos. No, I did not want to do that. YouTube videos to give out a verbal dialogue to students, to be able to do something that you can't actually express yourself, to give them, to let them see out of the window of the classroom into the world, more or less. I used WordPress to be able to reflect. I've used technologies such as Wordle and Meograph to address my students in a different format, to get their attention, get their enthusiasm by giving them different ways of looking at knowledge and looking at information. And in the future, a technology web source I like to use is Edutopia. I don't know how it's pronounced, but it has a lot of blog entries that allows from other educators that help us grow, help us to learn new things that we can use in the classroom. Another thing that I've learned in this past few months is a lot of instructional strategies. Something that we did earlier this year that at first, when I first saw it, I was like, well, I get the purpose, I didn't want to do it, but I'm so thankful that I did. It was an instructional strategies menu, because I used it multiple times this semester, and it was a very thankful thing to have. And the two examples here, I have the use of a concept mastery routine and then a frames routine. And in the concept mastery routine, in this example here, I have students identify, in an S12 review style, reviewing a term that they had issues on, to help them identify what they're missing on the topic, what they're missing in the subject. And then over here on the framing routine, I have students using these frame routines as an example of study and information, of being able to review what they've learned and break it down into smaller context. And another thing I've used in instructional strategies is something I call the last lesson refresher. And it's kind of like a daily quiz check. It's something to check, adjust to it, to check on what the students learned in the last class. So here is an example after an opportunity cost unit. We started the next class with an opportunity cost question. Try to have the students piece it together. So I'll ask one student for one part of the question, have another student for another part, and then putting it together in a larger context and having them answer the question themselves. And then also having the use of big questions could be just stupendous for being able to explain the overall topic of an entire unit. Being able to ask the students, all right, so now we know what the U.S. economy looks like. Why do we trade? Why do we export and import? What is the purpose of that? And then having them think about it in the entire unit, and then being able to answer that question at the end of an entire lesson. These are examples of some instructional strategies. As for a typical lesson, I like to keep my lesson plans very plain and simple, but at the same time very detailed, as you can see, very small font. This lesson plan here is going over my opportunity cost lesson. So I had them begin with a quick check on how do they understand economics. I handed out exit slips and I asked them, every student, please identify for me, how do you define economics? What is it? And I like the responses I was getting back from students being able to go down the road and check their understanding, being able to build upon their prior knowledge, being able to augment their prior knowledge. And it gave me a great glimpse on how I needed to address the future lessons. And in the unit, I briefly went over. Just what opportunity cost is, the use of scarcity, the use of resources, how people make choices. And the purpose of this unit was to identify why sometimes prices go up, why sometimes we can't have things when we want them. And then in return had them complete an opportunity cost worksheet, giving them real world problems to work on. And then I had them create their own problem for a partner to answer. I wanted to put learning in their hands, create real world learning, something that they will be able to identify outside of the classroom. And then also, some things you also see in my other lessons is jigsaw. And this is something that can be taken over multiple different units, having students learn different concepts and they come together as a group to create a study guide or to create a presentation to inform the class on a certain subject. And then I like to use notebooks. I like to be able to incorporate all the information they need for the class into a notebook, something that they can go back to and say, well, I'm having issues on this topic. All right, pull out your notebook. We'll go through it and see what you wrote down, have them add on notes into what they missed. I like to create three-dimensional notes, having teacher set notes, student set notes, and then add-on notes, something they can add on during lecture. Something that gives them the ability to have multiple perspectives on notes. And then finally, I like to use visual discovery every once in a while. So one of my examples here, I asked students, what has changed in the photo? And I said, well, think about it. You have old style shipping here, new style shipping. What has changed? And the answer is technology. So giving them the opportunity to look at a photo and critically go, I don't know what's going on here. Think about the question. What's going on? What is changing here? And then have them slowly identify the problem at hand. So that's just a brief look into what I've done over the past semester. And I guess I want to end on this quote. The road goes ever on and on, down the door from where it began. Not far ahead the road is gone, and I must follow if I can, pursuing it with eager feet, until it joins some larger way, where it may many paths and errands meet, and whither then I cannot say. This is, as some readers may identify, as from Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring. And I guess I identified this quote with a metaphor I wrote at the beginning of the year. And I talked about that my road in education is going to be a long road. But the purpose of me going down this road is I'm prepared for anything. I will be able to carry with me what I've learned over these past few months with me wherever I end up. And I know that I will be able to identify and be able to learn from the road ahead. The road's going to have a lot of roadblocks. It's going to have a lot of potholes. It's not going to be a perfect road, but it's going to give me the opportunity to learn from my mistakes, grow upon that experience, and be a better educator. Overall, in this time here at Virginia Tech in the grad school, I feel that I've been able to build up my knowledge and be able to be a better learner based upon the standards I have been given. And I've been given a lot of processes that will enable me to learn in the future. Thank you.